within, I think, 48 to 72 hours, I was making my debut for Liverpool. Sometimes the managers are just, some players would take pills to sleep. I started to drink more and more, gamble more and more. I literally fell off the edge of a cliff and found myself lying at the bottom.
Welcome to the Train Effective podcast. My name is Nick Humphreys. I'm the founder and the creator of Train Effective. Today we have a special guest here. His name is?
Stephen Caulker.
And Stephen, where have you played?
Well, a lot of clubs. To give a real sort of quick overview, I've played at the heights of my career at Tottenham and Liverpool. And I've also played in Turkey for 4 years and in Scotland, so I'm well travelled.
Stephen's played all over in the Premier League, for England, in the Championship, and we actually have a Train Effective camp going on at the moment. So in our audience are over 20, 30 players from different countries. We have a special surprise here for the players in bringing Stephen across. Let's kick things right off. How was it playing with Harry Kane?
Playing with Harry Kane. So I played with Harry whilst I was a youngster at Tottenham. I came through at the age of 15. I was signed. Harry was the year younger than me. At the time, wasn't what I would call a standout player. He, I think, was a late developer. By the age of 19, he then started to really sort of kick on. He had a few loan spells where he wasn't, as successful as he is today. But one thing that I always speak about when I talk about Harry is like his mindset was just incredible. He had a mindset like no other. From such a young age, he wanted to take the free kicks, he wanted to take the penalties, whether he was training up with the first team, wherever we were. He knew what he wanted, and he was so focused on getting it. And since then he's gone on to have a phenomenal career. For me, he's one of the best strikers in the world. An incredible human being as well, which for me is important. Not just being a good player, but a good person off the pitch as well. So he's for me up there with definitely probably the top 3 players that I've had the pleasure of playing with.
But Harry Kane, guys, like you guys all see Harry Kane now. You see the goals he's scoring. You see him playing, being top scorer in the Premier League and such. But I think that's a really interesting example there of someone that was maybe overlooked a bit, or no one would really think that he could reach the heights that he has today. At what age did you join the Tottenham Academy?
So I joined Tottenham from the age of 15. I was pretty late, to be honest with you. A lot of the boys had sort of been in the system from 7, 8, 9. They'd been familiar with each other. They knew the system inside out. Technically, they were way better than me. But I came in with a sense of rawness, a raw passion, a raw desire to make it. And, very quickly after signing at 15, by 17, I'd gone on loan and was playing first team football and sort of jumped ahead a lot of a lot of the boys who'd been in the system for a while. And, that's something for me, looking back. I so often used to get distracted and think, how's he playing here? Why is he playing there? But actually, like throughout your career, it's like that. One moment I'm ahead, then he's ahead, and actually, what I learned was just to focus on myself. Not looking at the guy next to me and thinking, well, hold on, he's 19 and he's already playing Premier League. Why am I not there? I've just learned that in your own time, it will come as long as you are working. I don't just believe in sitting in my room and praying. I believe in sitting in my room praying in the morning and then getting out and doing the work.
And with Harry Kane specifically, do you remember anything that he was doing when you're in the academy with him, or just in Tottenham in general? Was he doing extras after training? Was he did you see him doing anything specific that you thought, oh wow, he's really working hard? Or
no, I think the culture at Tottenham at the time was one where everyone was focused, everyone was doing extra work, every single player there. That year group, that age group, 30 players came out and made it pro. You've got the likes of Andros Townsend, who's played for Tottenham, played for Crystal Palace, Everton. We had the likes of Danny Rose, who's again gone on to play for England, gone on to play for Tottenham. The list goes on. Ryan Mason, who was then manager of Tottenham. We had such a special sort of age group where the coaches were great and they developed us and gave us freedom to be ourselves on and off the pitch. So he was in an environment where everyone was working hard, so he didn't stand out for that. But what he stood out for was his mentality. When I went up with the first team, I was a little bit scared, a little bit anxious. He just had that mindset that he believed in himself, that he was good enough. And it probably took a little while for his body to catch up, because as I said, he wasn't someone at 17 who was setting the world alight, but by the time he went on to make his debut for Tottenham, he was ready, and full credit to him.
Yeah, you often hear stories like with Harry Kane. I read a story recently where he's always the first into training, and he takes the players on like practices at penalties. It just does extra training after a session. So he makes sure that the boys are in top form and just doing the extras. You hear Ronaldo doing the same kind of thing, and you hear a story in general with many players that make it to the top that they were kind of overlooked at the beginning, or yeah, they just weren't perceived as that they were going to be the best or reach the top rungs. Are there any players like Harry Kane or like other players that you played with which may have had like a similar journey that you know?
One who's pretty famous right now would be Abire Eze. He's someone who, during our time together at QPR, was very much overlooked by Ian Holloway at the time. I remember having a conversation with Ebbs and asking him what's going on, what's the situation, and he didn't know. He was sort of put aside. There's sort of a real lack of communication, unfortunately, in football, and it wasn't until he then went on loan, where he'd pushed through a loan move with his agent and gone and proved himself at first team level, that then Holloway would then recognise him as a talent and someone who was hungry. I personally had conversations with Holloway to say, why is this boy not in our first team? And that the reason in his head was he doesn't work hard enough. He doesn't see that in him. Football's a game of opinions. I saw it in him. A lot of people saw it in him, and today Gareth Southgate sees it in him. So that's not to say, oh my God, how does Holloway see the game? Not at all. It's just to show that at different periods of people's careers, managers and coaches have different opinions on you. I can give plenty of examples of that later on.
One thing that we really emphasize at Train Effective is like just doing the extras. We preach a lot about the 10,000 hour rule, if you know it. 20 hours of deliberate practice for 10 years to become an expert in something, like football or in chess or in tennis or whatever discipline it may be. And I think that's just with Eze, with Harry, or with any other examples you have, like it could be really interesting for people to know that. Yeah. Was there anything that you did in particular when you were younger where you did those things that which really set you apart from the others?
I would say for me, what I had was my resilience. I would say that's probably my key strength would be resilience. So when I wasn't picked or I was put aside, I just found a way to keep going. That's not something that everyone has. I've seen it for many years. I've seen way more talented players than me fall aside because they just never had the ability to keep going. Where one coach says no, where the second coach says no, and the third coach says no. It can be 50 coaches who tell you no, but it could be the 51st who give you the opportunity. And I've been resilient enough and fortunate enough to keep going to then get that opportunity. But I mean, as a youngster, I won a trial at Reading, QPR, Chelsea, Brentford. Brentford were in League Two at the time, and all of them told me no. Brentford actually said to me, "I've got 2 left feet." So that was kind of the message back to me from a young age. It wasn't until I was 15 that Tottenham gave me the opportunity.
2 left feet. So what was the deal with that? Did you actually have 2 left feet?
I wouldn't like to think so, but I think what it was with me, I was just so nervous. So when I went to a new environment and I met new players and they all had the kit on and I felt like an outsider, I would get nervous and I would start trying to be the player that I thought they wanted me to be, when actually after 15 years playing as a professional, I've kind of realized that the most important thing for me is playing my own game. They signed me because of what they saw in me, not because they hope I can be like somebody else, And that's something I have to remind myself even today, because there's moments where I find myself wanting to defend like Van Dijk and play football like Ramos, and it's like, actually, I'm Steven Caulker, this is what I'm about, and just reminding myself of that, giving myself the confidence to be me, really important.
I think like a lot of the camp players that we have at Train Effective have this similar experience. Did you guys have any of this same feeling when you came? Like, oh, I really need to impress, I really need to do something like impressive to impress Simon or Ben on the first day, so I'm going to play a certain way. Did any of you guys have this feeling? Yeah? Okay. And what you're saying, Stephen, is as soon as you start putting in your mind like, oh, I have to impress so and so, then the style of your game changes and you just don't play as well as you.
Yeah, well, that's my experience. I always wanted to make that impression, and sort of took a big step to show myself as something different to actually what I was. When you're here for a reason, and you're here because these guys trust in you and your ability, you know. So it's just reminding ourselves that on a daily basis.
Yeah. I also heard a story with you whilst you're at Tottenham. I think in the academy, coaches had to drag you or the players off the training pitch because you guys would train so much.
It was very much like that, yeah.
So what would you guys do? Was it just like after the trainings you would go do something with other players, or like what?
Yeah, so we had a culture there where everyone was hungry to make it, everyone. And as I said, a lot of players did go on to make it and make it to the highest level. But what the culture was there was one that people were willing to work. So if you're going to work after training, then I'm going to work after training, and the next person's going to work, because nobody wanted the other person to get above them, you know. Football is dog eat dog. That's definitely something that some of my experience I can vouch for. It really is dog eat dog. You know, over the course of 15 years, you've probably got 5 to 10 people you'd call as friends, 200-300 players who I could pick up the phone and, you know, or drop them a text, happy Christmas, but you're not gonna, you know, have the conversation day in, day out, you know, because the reality is, even though we're sat next to each other in the change room, we were fighting for that spot, we were fighting for that contract. So that was kind of how it was, and the coaches were very much, you know, trying to control us in their own way. You know, they let us be free in the sense that they like express ourselves, but they also wanted to manage our load, because obviously if we trained too much, we were at risk of injuries.
And at the peak, how much do you think you were training a day or a week?
Well, it'd certainly be every day for sure, and it would be double sessions pretty much every day. But it's more about working smart than just working hard. So the day before a game, I would really come down on my load, because it was important that I rested and was ready for the next day. So it was about managing my load and managing my body. I think it's important that as you grow, that you learn what's best for you, because I know there's a lot of sports science now. You've got the GPS, the vest, you've got everything tracking your movement and how well you slept and all of that. But I think it's just about important knowing individually how you feel best and when you perform best, you know?
You've lived the dream that many of the players here want to live. You've played at Tottenham, QPR, Liverpool, you played for the England national team, and this is what you guys want to do as well, right? Yeah. So you've lived that dream, and you've gone through all these experiences, both good and bad. So I wanted to touch upon that for the guys here. What is it that you hate about pro football?
What is it I hate?
Yeah.
A lot, to be honest with you, a lot. There's actually a lot of things that I guess when I was sat where you guys are sat that I never knew existed, you know? I never thought what it would be like with the relationship with the fans. I never understood that fans will hate you, often hate you, actually. As a defender, you know, you lose the game 2-1, you're a mistake, you make a mistake for a goal, the fans hate you. You lose someone's accumulator on the weekend and it's cost them money, they hate you. You're the opposition fans, you score against that, they hate you. And that was something I guess I had to really come to terms with, that actually being a footballer, you're not loved by everybody. Actually, you're loved by a select few, and that changes day to day. And when I used to base my value on what other people thought of me, I was constantly up and down. When I played well, then I was high as a kite, and when I had a bad game, I was low and I didn't want to go out of my house, because everyone would, I feel, were looking at me in a strange way and asked me what happened the other day. And so that was something that I guess I absolutely hated about the game. As I've got older and a bit more wiser, I've learned to just stick to the people close to me, and they know me as a father, as a son, first and foremost, instead of me as a footballer. And football is second, you know. So that was one part that for the early years I really hated and struggled to come to terms with.
Do you remember a specific example where, I don't know, like someone did some sort of abuse to you, which you remember in your head, like, yeah, that really hurt, or that was like, I still remember that?
No, I wouldn't say there was any specific moment. I would say I think the most difficult time was when social media was introduced. So I kind of caught both eras. So I caught pre-social media, which was great, and then I kind of caught the early stages, and it was sort of Twitter really. That was the one that sort of burst onto the scene, and that was relentless. You know, after any game, you just wanted to avoid Twitter because you were called all sorts of names. And as I said, when I was young, I took it personally.
And did you think about that? Like, if you guys lost the game or things didn't go as expected, would you think about that in your mind, and then it would affect you in training or affect you in the next game?
Yeah, certainly. It would affect my confidence.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if I watched you guys play today and I said to you afterwards, oh, I didn't think you were very good, or I didn't think this, like, that can stay with you, right? That can stay with you. That can hurt, you know, when someone is telling you that. So that was kind of like my experience on a massive scale, where you'd have 40,000 at White Hart Lane at the time at Tottenham, and you made a mistake and they're singling you out and they're pointing the fingers at you, and Gary Neville on Sky Sports is drawing a ring around you and saying you shouldn't have been there, and like, it's lonely, right? It was a really lonely place for me. But then, as I said, as I sort of moved on and started to think, actually, that's one person's opinion. Even if it's 40,000 people's opinion, it's irrelevant. It's what about I think of myself, and my own confidence comes from the work that I put in on a day-to-day basis.
And what else is it that you hate about pro football?
What else? No, I think probably spending so much time away from my family. I think that's probably really challenging. As I mentioned, I'm just back from Africa now. I'm out of contract. I don't know when the phone's going to ring, where the phone's going to be ringing from, what my next move is. That kind of uncertainty. I would say prepare yourself now, because if you are going to be pro and managers call you, they don't answer the phone when you call them, but when they call you, you've got to be there. You've got to be there. So I'm sat with you today in Watford, and tomorrow I could, be on a plane to I don't know, Saudi, where a lot of players are heading, or Thailand, or up north somewhere. It really varies. So that kind of uncertainty, I guess, is challenging, especially when you have a family.
I was listening to a podcast you did earlier, and you were saying this was at the time before you moved to Liverpool. I forget the club which you were playing for.
Southampton.
And you weren't getting any minutes there. But all of a sudden the phone rang on a Saturday or a Sunday, I think, and that was Liverpool that called up and said that they wanted to sign you. And then on the Tuesday, I think, you were playing against Arsenal at Anfield.
Yeah,
right?
Up front.
Yeah.
It was insane. So for those of you who don't know, I'm a centre half. I've never been known for scoring a massive amount of goals. I can score a few headers from corners and stuff like that, but I've never been the most technically gifted with my feet. So when the phone rang to get the opportunity to go to Liverpool, was obviously, I was shocked to begin with. Secondly, I was scared because I was at the time I was in Dublin. I was playing at Southampton. I was told by my agent, rush home, pack your bags, get on the train up to Liverpool. It's real, it's happening. So it was all very fast. It was scary, and within, I think, 48 to 72 hours, I was making my debut for Liverpool. Jurgen Klopp was the manager, and he put me in up front. And we were losing 3-2 at the time, and a few minutes to go, and we got the goal. So it was amazing. What an experience. And after that, Klopp come to me and said in the change room, like, people think you're crazy until it works. And I always sort of remember that. And he played me up front a couple of times after that as well for a few special moments. So really good moments in my career looking back. But again, it's just an example of how quickly things can change.
And touching upon that, there's also politics, right, with football, and it's something that I've heard you dislike as well.
Yeah, definitely. The politics are something that I guess take place in all areas of life.
Yeah, because I was going to say, like, for a lot of players here, I know probably each of us have had that experience where a coach has said you're going to start, or a coach has promised you things and then it doesn't end up happening. Have you guys ever had that experience? Yeah. So this doesn't just happen at an amateur level, it happens at Steve's level too, but yeah.
All the way up through football. So I've played as a Premier League, Championship, League One, played in Turkey, played in Scotland. It's the same everywhere. It's the same. So managers will tell you you're going to play, and then the team sheet comes and you're not on it. Sometimes without an explanation, sometimes with an explanation. I think with an explanation you can better understand it. It hurts, can be angry. I used to react really badly when I was young. It cost me a lot in my career, cost me a lot because my reaction was terrible. So every time I was dropped or well, that's how I looked at it. I was dropped basically. I wasn't rested. It was I'm dropped. I'm rejected, and my reaction was to fight. You know, I would often go and argue with the manager. I'd knock on his door as soon as training's finished, saying, "Well, why am I not been playing?" I'd been sulking all training session. Just for me, as I got older, again, I look and go, how disrespectful for my teammates. Really disrespectful, because those 11 who are playing, they need to be focused, they need to be right, and I need to help them get right. So really, really selfish. And secondly, when I look back, I think to myself, it's also really childish, because actually, if I'd have just kept things right, the following game, more often than not, you're back in. It can be because the team lose. It can be because the guy gets injured in your position. It can just be that the manager was being honest and resting you. So that's not the case for everybody. Sometimes the managers are just, if I'm allowed to say that, right? That sometimes that is the case. But even if they are, I think the most important thing is that you take care of yourself, you know, number one, and put yourself in the best possible position to be selected the next game.
Yeah, and I want to know which managers you dealt with that you thought were, because I think that'll be interesting. But we'll get into that in a second. Okay, let's change the topic then. What is it that you love about football?
Well, I still love just putting my boots on and kicking the ball. I still love it. So from a young age, that's what I love doing. I love playing football, and I still love that today. I love the five-a-sides in training. I love scoring goals, so mostly with my head. But you know, I love that side of it. I love putting in a good tackle and that feeling, that adrenaline rush. So I just love that. I love the playing side of it. You know, there's obviously big rewards at the top. People assume to be a pro footballer, you're guaranteed to be a multi-millionaire. That's not the case. You're talking the elite level. So the percentages to make it are obviously very slim. And then to make it to the top within that, it's obviously very hard. If you're a League One player, a League Two player, you will earn a good living, but it's a short career. So I love the fact that I was fortunate enough to have played at the top level and earn some good money. That's always great. Was able to do fantastic things with it. I built a school in Sierra Leone. I've brought my family a house, you know, that kind of stuff. You know, my parents a house, just to say thank you for all the sort of commitment and dedication that they made when I was growing up. So those are things that I love about it for sure.
What do you guys, like, I want to ask you guys, when you think of a pro footballer, what is the number one thing, one of you guys can answer this, like, what's the number one thing that you think, like, oh, I want that? Besides money, because Steve just like pointed that out, but besides money, like, what's the number one thing that comes in your mind? Like, yeah, go on.
Well, probably for me, it's like I want to play in the biggest derbies. Like, you were at Fenerbahce, and I sometimes watch the Turkish Super League, and I see Galatasaray against Fenerbahce, and like 50,000 ultras screaming each other, and they're filling the stadium, full packed stadium. It's evening, the lights going on. It's a derby time, you know. It's going heavy. That's like, for me, like, it would be a dream. Like 50,000 people screaming,
Yeah.
and everyone is sharing their passion, sharing their love to football, and it's like, it would be my dream to play in, like, the biggest derby here in Europe.
How do you think you would feel if you lost the game?
It's a derby. I mean, it would like be heartbreaking for sure, but there's always be a second game.
Yeah. Well, I actually never got to play in that derby, unfortunately. I never got the opportunity to play in it, but I've played in North London derby, Arsenal Tottenham, and I played in Swansea Cardiff as well, which is the Welsh derby. Good feeling, right? A really good feeling, and as you mentioned, the fans and the atmosphere that goes into it. But when you lose, like, that feeling, honestly, that feeling, like dealing with the losses, for me, it's like it's a whole nother subject. You know, it's really challenging, especially on derby day, because everyone in that area knows you and is focused on you, and it's difficult. You don't want to show your face in the restaurant afterwards and stuff, you know. So it's a bit challenging.
What is the biggest crowd you've ever played in front of?
Biggest crowd. Well, I played at Wembley during the Olympics. I was fortunate enough to play in the Olympics team, so that, I mean, it's at 90,000 or so. Millennium Stadium also, I think, is around 90,000, maybe a little bit more. So yeah, I've played in front of a lot of big crowds.
What is it like playing in front of 90,000 people?
may sound strange, but it doesn't really matter whether it's like 5,000 or 90,000 because it becomes normal. You know what I mean? It's not like you specifically feel like, wow, there's 90,000 people there. It's about the atmosphere in the stadium. So if you play in a small, intense stadium and it's got 5,000 in, and the atmosphere is rocking, the adrenaline is pumping anyway. If you play in a 90,000 seater and there's only 10,000 fans, then the atmosphere is rubbish, you know? So it just depends on how close you are, how loud the fans are. But I tell you one thing, when the fans are energetic like that, the adrenaline is insane. Can't sleep at night, you know, you go home, I'm up all night, I'm thinking about the game, I'm still buzzing. It's difficult, right? Because you get to sleep at 6 a.m., you got to get up at 7 or 8 a.m. for training the next day. So again, it's like learning to manage that. Some players will take pills to sleep, but it's obviously not recommended because then you become dependent on them. So, I mean, the players, your Man Cities and your top levels, for me, it's incredible. You know, they play at, Man City as an example. You know, they played Madrid on the Tuesday. They played Everton on the Saturday. They're playing at Madrid again, and you know, it's all such crucial games, and it's incredible to stay at that level for that long.
And speaking of specific moments as well, you were on the pitch when Ibrahimovic scored with 30-yard bicycle kick. You guys know that goal, I'm sure you've seen. So just explain. You were on that field, right? And
I came off the pitch, so I need to mention this bit, okay? So I came off. We was actually winning 2-1 at the time. I'd scored on my debut. It was an incredible moment. I came off around 78 minutes, something like that. I sat down on the bench. Tom Huddleston said to me, "Wow, you're going to be the headlines tomorrow." Within the next 12 minutes, the headlines, my name was disappeared, and it was the Zlatan show. He'd scored. I think he scored 4 that game. So he scored 1 while I was on the pitch and 3 in the 12 minutes I was off it. Just phenomenal. What a player. To witness that goal as he's doing it, you know, and it's gone in. We've kind of like jumped, thinking, wow, special player of a special talent, and was incredible to be there that moment. Even if it did slightly overshadow my debut, at least people will never forget it for that reason.
But was there anything special that you saw about Zlatan, like where the way he moved, or anything that was just caught your eye and you're like, oh, how does he do that, or how?
For me, the thing that stood out for him the most, playing against him, was how quick he was. That was for me was a real kind of shock, because a man of his size is not often that quick. So I would actually tend to prefer to play against someone like him rather than someone like Aguero, who's short and nippy and twisted and turning. But Zlatan had it all. Physically incredible, speed, strength, and then obviously technique. So again, someone of his size, it's often difficult to have that technical ability, but he had it, and he had it in abundance. So he would probably be the hardest player, if not one of the hardest players I've ever played against.
Any other player that's really hard to defend?
Yeah, as I mentioned, Aguero, really tough. Always plays on my shoulder. So as a defender, you know, I'm sat here facing the play, watching the play there, and he's just constantly there. And it's like in the blink of an eye, it was the era where, you know, sort of David Silva was there, and he could find that pass. So, you know, when he looks that way and reverses it, Aguero, you think is here, is now here, and he's running through on goal. So top player. Suarez also, again, another top player, really difficult to play against because he just doesn't stop running, just pressing. So yeah, lots of top players.
And out of the players you have played with, who do you think's the most professional that you've played with?
There's a lot. I'd say probably, I want to say Jose Fonte. If you guys know him, he was at Southampton, won the Euros with Portugal. He was exceptional. He was the ultimate athlete. God knows what his body fat was, of 3%, 2%, something insane like that. He was a top professional.
What did he do specifically where he stood out beyond the rest?
Well, just his discipline with his diet, his discipline with his training. I mean, he's someone who rose through the league very late, then broke into the Portugal team, then won the Euros. Like, he just had a phenomenal career, but it didn't happen for him until so late, so far down the line. So for me, that's what stood out, discipline.
And who's a player you've played with which they just, like, you don't know how they got through training, they're just, you know, they're not putting in the work really, but somehow they just manage to just smash it every game, every training?
Del Tarabat. What a talent! Like an incredible talent. So we played with him at Tottenham and at QPR. He'll probably say by his own admission, never reached the heights that he certainly should have. Was one of the most talented players I've ever seen. But just yeah, his lifestyle at the time just wasn't what was required of him. You know, I think he went to Benfica and sorted himself out, but definitely during his time at QPR and Tottenham, he would probably say let himself down. But in terms of talent, just phenomenal.
Speaking about just the managers you've played with or played under, you've had Jurgen Klopp, Andre Pirlo, Solskjaer, Harry Redknapp, Ronald Koeman. Is there anyone else I'm missing which is sort of like pretty reputable?
It's crazy than some of the names you're saying there. Actually, I'm thinking that myself. Andre Villas-Boas was another one. He was at Tottenham and Chelsea. There's a lot, but obviously in that calibre, there's only a few. Brendan Rodgers would probably be up there.
Give me one good thing about each manager and one bad thing about each manager which you didn't like.
I have to be careful what I say.
Klopp, Jurgen Klopp.
Loved his passion. His passion really stood out for me. So his passion was just clear for all to see, even in training. He was just so enthusiastic. Would shout, would scream, would go insane at times, but it was just his overwhelming passion, and he created a really nice culture there. It was nice to be a part of something.
You're missing the other thing.
The bad
The
side.
bad.
Oh, the bad side would be he didn't play me enough. That'd be it.
All right, Andre Pirlo.
Well, obviously a phenomenal player. Only recently sort of retired. So him, for me, what was great was like his ability to join in training. Like he was just incredible. So I'd have like after training I wanted to do finishing or heading and stuff, and I'd have him whipping the balls in. So that was like an incredible plus to working with such an incredible player. And the bad side for me, no, I wouldn't say there's a bad side. I'd say that he's still developing as a manager. Just with communication, I felt the communication could have been better. As I'm very big on communication, how you communicate with your players, good and bad. I think it's important that the player knows where they stand. So that'd be something that I guess that I wish he did more of. But yeah, I mean, I can't say anything bad about him. He's a top player. Solskjaer, he was very early on in his coaching career when I worked with him at Cardiff. Such a nice man. You know, it's worthwhile mentioning that. Just what a nice man he was. What didn't I like about him? He wasn't able to keep us up. We got relegated that year. So yeah, it's just, I mean, it's a team game, right? We're all part of it, but I would have just, that's be the only negative, is that we just couldn't retain Premier League status that year.
Anything else you want to say about coaches or managers? Maybe I think for all the players that we have in the camp, coaches will get something extra out of you guys that you may not know you had. Is there any coaches that did that for you, or?
Yeah, I would say Chris Ramsey for me was that. So Chris Ramsey works at QPR. He was also at Tottenham for a period of time. For me, he just trusted in me. He just constantly trusted in me, and I felt that, and that's so important for me, like to feel that trust from the manager, because then I can go out there and feel, you know what, if I make a mistake today, I'm not going to be dropped, because so often it's like you go on the pitch, you feel if I make this mistake, then I'm going to be out, and he's not going to like me, he's not going to want me, and like with him, I just knew they had my back and he trusted me, so that allowed me to play with freedom. So for me, that was the number one thing that I loved about Chris.
All right, so moving on, you have another chapter in your story where things turned a bit worse or darker. We don't have to touch upon all the specifics, but I guess one thing for us in the room that are all striving to play at the highest level, maybe it can be hard to understand where you can go to the highest of highs, play in front of 90,000 at Wembley, play with all these top clubs, and then still get into a sort of like a dark spiral. How did that happen for you?
For me, I got into the cycle because of addiction. So every time something would go wrong, I turned to alcohol, I turned to gambling. That was my coping mechanism. So every time a manager didn't pick me, every time we lost the derby, every time I felt like crap, I'd played bad, I turned to drink. That was my sort of coping mechanism. I thought, I'll just go and get drunk and forget about it all. the problem with that was it became my coping mechanism, and I then depended on that to make myself feel better. And what happened was, over a period of time, it started to affect my performances. I started to drink more and more, gamble more and more, and I was unable to perform to the level that was required of me. And football managers couldn't trust me. And because of that, I fell down the leagues, and I found the opportunities hard to come by. So it's a period of my life that I definitely learned a lot in. It's a period of my life that I would say I regret, because one, it's cost me millions. Two, it's cost me opportunities, and three, I hurt a lot of people close to me along the way. You know, that I'd hurt because I was dependent on you know, an addiction, and with the addiction you start to lie about where you are and all of that stuff that came with it. So that was a dark part of my career, and I will add to that. It's a message for you guys within it. Hopefully you never experience addiction and depression and all that stuff that comes with it, right? But if you do, I mean, obviously there's help out there. There's plenty of support around nowadays. But the biggest thing I want to mention in terms of the football, because you're all aspiring footballers, is reputation, right? Once you have a bad reputation, it is so hard to change that image. So a good reputation, you take years to build. Bad reputation comes within a day, literally within a day. So if you look at a lot of the athletes at the top of the game right now, they always have like a media team around them, they have the support, and they have people trying to balance their image, because they know just how important it is. Once they become that person who's the bad boy, the one who likes to drink, and I'll give you an example now. Jack Grealish, who's enjoying the Champions League, enjoying winning the treble. It's all great, right? Let's see how that pans out for the next year or two. But I could tell you now, as soon as the form dips, which happens to everyone, right? The media will switch that and go, that's because he's doing this, that's because he's doing that. And his reputation will very quickly become a bad one. And it's difficult once it does become that to then manage it and turn it back. So phenomenal player, just enjoying himself. Let's see how that can unfold in a negative way. And I think it's a message for everyone to go, actually, you know what, I need to be careful. Whatever you do, even at this age, is going to give you a lasting impression of many coaches.
Yeah, and so you kind of went, I guess in your own words, a bit downhill over a few seasons. Mm-hmm. And then I heard that you had to contact clubs and managers on your own, which a few players have done here. I heard you contacted 70.
Yeah, 70 different teams, yeah. How many of them replied to you, can I ask? None?
One, maybe.
One, yeah. So very similar to the experience I've had. So even having, by that stage, I was 25, 26. I'd played for England. I'd played 100 and plus games in the Premier League. All the rest of whatever was on my CV, still couldn't get a response. You know, still couldn't get a response from the teams, from the managers, from the owners. Very, very difficult, right? Even players I played with who were their managers still wouldn't give me the chance because I had a bad reputation. So it's tough. It's tough enough, as you're finding, trying to reach out to people. So bear in mind that when you feel like giving up and going, oh, you know what, forget about it, like, remember that, like, just one move can change your whole life and change your family's life. So just, like, be patient with it, you know. Really, that's one thing. If I could give a message to my younger self, would be patient.
How do you think your career would have gone if you didn't get into this spiral?
I think it would have been very different. I think most players tend to sort of go like this. You know, you may go down, but you go down at a much slower rate. I just, like, flew down, you know. I literally fell off the edge of a cliff and found myself lying at the bottom with very little support around me at the time, other than close friends and family, which I was fortunate to have. And it's been a long way to climb somewhere back up there. Still haven't got back to that height, but I've had to climb a long way. Yeah, I would just say that if I didn't do that, it probably would have, I'm not saying I would have, you know, had 100 caps for England, but I may have just gone down a little bit slower and maybe played at a higher level for longer than I did.
And I guess now you're transitioning with what you're doing these days. You're setting up an academy, right? Yeah. Do you want to touch upon that a bit?
Yeah, so during that period where I'd left football and I didn't know what I was going to do, who I was going to be, and I had no identity, basically, I found it difficult. So I started to think, now I've kind of got myself out of that. Okay, what about the young boys coming through who dedicate their whole life to being footballers, who get to 18, 19, 20 and realize my dream like might not happen, right? Or certainly might not happen the way you envisioned it. So kids, young men, hopefully young women as well. Once we expand from 18 to 21, have the opportunity to come to us where we play games against pro teams. So we'll go and play games against Liverpool. We'll go and play games against QPR. We'll go and play games against Gillingham, right? So you're going to play across all different platforms, which then gives you an opportunity to showcase yourself. 1% or less may get the opportunity to join a Liverpool, or some might get a chance to join a Gillingham. It's just an opportunity that you may otherwise not have had, because I'm telling you to be patient, but football is very impatient, and you kind of need time. We offer you that time. We offer you the time to develop a little later. So alongside the football, we do the education. So you're simultaneously working on bettering yourself off the pitch and working on bettering yourself on the pitch. So though that combination of those two with the emotional support and well-being packages, I hope to improve the lives of many young men and one day young women, and to go on to play at the highest level, to study and have those opportunities. So that's something that I'm very passionate about, something that I'm working hard to do at the moment, and watch this space.
These young men do have some important games coming up. Actually, this week they've had already some important games. Tomorrow you guys will also have some important games, showcase matches. Is there any advice that you give to them for these matches?
Yeah, as I kind of already touched upon, just like be yourself when you go out there. Like if I used to get really nervous before games, which is natural, and I think it's okay to feel nervous before games, right? It means you care and you want it. What works for me today is I just tell myself, okay, what can I control? So when I'm heading out there on that pitch, I could control how hard I work, right? So how far I'm going to run, how fast I'm going to run, that's within my control. How hard I'm going to go to challenge, how aggressive I'm going to press, that's within my control. I can't control whether I take on 5 players and score a hat-trick and we win 4-0, because the ref will play a part in that, the linesman will play a part in that, the coach who puts you on and puts you off will play a part in that, the 21 other players around you will play a part in that. So trying to control all the things around you is impossible, absolutely impossible. So I just focus on how hard can I run, how fast can I run, how far am I going to run, and the aggression. For me, when I watch any young player, or even first team player, it doesn't have to be a young player, what I look for all the time is that aggression. So I mentioned Suarez earlier, for me, one of the best in the world. If you look at just how aggressive he is, even after all of his success, he's still pressing, chasing balls, and it stands out. So that's a lot of things that I want to see as a aspiring manager, as an experienced pro. It's just them young boys, and the last thing I touch on is being vocal. So even when you don't feel confident, you don't realize how much that helps, just to speak, because it's not just about you. You're also helping your teammate. When you're telling him that, the ball's coming in and the man's coming man on, it's the information that he needs to know his next pass. So, yeah, they're the things that I would definitely suggest that you take on board, and try to enjoy it.
We asked them last night to think about some questions they could ask you. So, okay. Yeah, who wants to go first?
Who's the toughest opponent you played against?
Toughest opponent. So, as I said earlier, Zlatan would definitely be one of them. Aguero, for how smart he was, and then I would also say Christian Benteke. Like during his time at Aston Villa, when he was on top of his game, there was no one better. So physically strong, scoring goals. He's a good example of someone who is a competence player, because when he lost his competence, he's never quite been the same. But really, really tough opponent.
What is it like being the captain of Sierra Leone?
Challenging, yeah, really challenging. A lot of pressure on my shoulders, carrying the weight of a nation. I love it. I love the country. I love the way I feel when I'm there. I love what I'm fighting for. It's a country, it's a third world country. It's a country that needs a lot of developing and a lot of work done. And I feel that we're the fortunate ones on the pitch who go to get the chance to represent our country in a good light. But it's challenging. It's so different from the football in Europe. The conditions in which we travel in, the conditions in which we play in, the weather, everything. So it's been able to adapt. But it's probably right now my most enjoyable football. You know, I definitely prefer it to club football.
Why did you transition from the England national team to Sierra?
I was involved with England when I was young, really young. I made my debut at 20. I was then in a few squads for the World Cup and stuff like that, never played again. It'd been around 6 or 7 years by this stage where I hadn't been involved with England, and Sierra Leone called me and said they just qualified for the Africa Cup of Nations. We're looking to bring in players from Europe with experience, come and help, come and be a part of it. And it was the first time someone had called me from Sierra Leone. So I thought about it long and hard. I had many conversations, and I just thought, what an opportunity to go and, one, play in the Africa Cup of Nations, and two, represent a nation on the other side of the world from a completely different background, but, you know, represent my granddad and his memory. So it felt like an opportunity I couldn't turn down. And yeah, like I said, I have to be honest, it's definitely challenging. And that initial stage of transitioning from being a player playing at the heights to then like washing my own kit was a sort of a big shift. But
You have to wash your own kit.
yeah, wash your own kit. Yeah, wash your own kit. And I said it's very different, the conditions that we work under, but it's also very humbling.
Did you always play as a centre back, or was there another position that you played in?
Yeah, good question. No, I started up front. So I used to play up front in Sunday League. Then I got pushed to midfield. And then from midfield, actually, just before I got scouted, I was asked to play centre-back for the local borough. And well, really, that coach there who asked me to play that position really just changed my life, because it was from playing centre-back. After that game, I got, I think, 5 or 6 different scouts had asked to take my number, and from that, the opportunity to go to Tottenham came. So, yeah, it's. I mean, I want to play up front for sure. I still want to be. You know, I grew up watching Thierry Henry and sort of idolised that position and getting all the glory. But I also have to play where the opportunity was, and that was at centre back.
Who was your football idol when you were younger? So that's someone that you looked up to.
It would definitely have been Thierry Henry as a youngster. Thierry Henry, most of you guys wouldn't know Lloyd Owusu. He was Brentford. Grew up in West London, so I couldn't afford to go and watch Arsenal, so we used to go and watch Brentford. They were in like League 2, League 1 at the time. Lloyd Owusu was my hero growing up, you know. And it's crazy, I've got to meet him since and have a friendship with him, so that's pretty cool, you know, to sort of like meet my idol. I got the chance to play against Henry as well in the Premier League, and that was just like insane for me, because I grew up watching him as one of the best. So yeah, I've had a few sort of idols, and then I guess as I became a centre half, I then looked towards Rio, and I got a chance to play with him as well. So I've been fortunate.
When you
Sorry.
were younger, did you ever have any doubts about if you'd like make it professional?
All the time, yeah, all the time. No, I doubted that I was good enough. I doubted that whether I'd ever going to get the chance, whether my chance had gone. I couldn't understand why I could play so good at school and at Sunday League, and then as soon as I went to a trial, I just froze, and I just couldn't understand it. And I'd go home and I'd be beating myself up and think that I was never going to make it. And then just one day it just clicked. You know, there was no secret formula. Just one day, I just thought, I let go of all the pressure and all the fear, and I just thought, control what I could control. What can I do out there today? Like just and as I said, I just ran until I couldn't run no more, and then the football took care of itself, and I eventually got signed.
If I can touch upon that, what do you mean by run until you couldn't run anymore?
So when I was out there, it was not a case of coasting through the game. I literally like left every part of me on that pitch, you know. So every opportunity I had to run, to close down, to press, I pressed aggressively. I sprinted when I could have walked. I was on it. I was vocal. Just gave everything. You know, after that game, I was exhausted physically, emotionally, mentally. But that's what Tottenham saw and went, we'll give him a chance. You know,
Just leave it all on the pitch, like no regrets after.
literally left it all on the pitch. And as I said, I'll be the first to tell you, I'm not technically the most gifted. You know, I'm not the quickest. I'm not the best in the air or any of those things. It's like I was pretty good at a lot of things. But as I said, like what really worked was just the energy and my presence. You know, what I brought to the game. So I was a captain in the Premier League as young as 21. to sort of give you an idea of my personality. So that kind of made up for where I was lacking in talent.
I think that's a message for you guys playing tomorrow. Like, you can't focus on what scouts think or what coaches think, but you can control the energy that you put in the field. And if you give it your all and you have no regrets, well, who knows where that will take you. So, yeah, it's a good piece of advice.
So you were like half a year without a team before you moved to Turkey. You played in Scotland and then you were half a year before. How was it like to move to Turkey with your family? The culture changed, the language. Did you learn it? Or?
Yeah. I learned the language. Yeah. So I went there. I went there alone. I went there just on trial. It was a 10-day trial. Luckily, I'd been training really hard during that 6-month period. So, because the coach said, I know your ability. I want to see if you're fit and how much you want it. Because again, my reputation was a bad one. So I had to prove it over the course of the 10 days. And I did that, luckily, because I'd put the work in. It wasn't fake, it wasn't talk, it was real. Just ran like as much as I could. I was cramping up everywhere. I was exhausted because no matter how much you train on your own, it's not the same as match fitness, you know, and team fitness. So got the opportunity, 6-month deal it was at the time, and I knew that I was going to get the extension. I just knew I said that this is where I'm going to be. So yeah, I only with a 6-month deal, I started to study the language. I got myself a home, and after I think 5 months in, they said, yeah, we'll give you the 2-year extension. So it was like I put everything into that, got it, and then I was like, I'm back. Let's go again. So yeah, really cool experience. Probably stayed over there a bit too long. I did 4 years, which for me was a bit too long. Towards the end, I made a move there that I didn't really want to do, but a great experience nonetheless.
Is your family kind of coming with you later, or you were like 4 years all by yourself?
4 years all by myself, yeah. 4 years, yeah. And it was during Corona,
Wow.
so it was tough. It was a tough time, but there's some of the sacrifices that you make in order to be a professional. You know, my son has always stayed here in England, so even when I went to Scotland, you know, I had to leave my family behind. So of course they visit, you know, during school holidays, but it's tough, and it's even tougher on him. So you know, you mentioned earlier about some of the stuff that I hate about professional football. For sure, it's that uncertainty of where you're going to be. Do you move your children and your girlfriend or your wife somewhere where you might only stay for 6 months? You know, Fenerbache, after 2 days, the manager come in and a new manager came and said, I don't want you. 2 days. 2 days. I'd worked, including the 6 months off, I'd worked 3 years to get back to that level. I had all of the big clubs to choose from. I chose Fenerbahce. Don't know why, just instinct said go there. And new manager said doesn't want me. So it's like dealing with, you know, the highs of all, the congratulations are still coming through, you know, from everyone, and to them being told, wow, I've got to find a new home already. So yeah, prepare yourself for that, you know. I know it's hard. It's kind of, how do you prepare yourself for that? But just know, if you ever find yourself in a situation, you're certainly not alone, and there are ways to deal with it, you know.
How does that conversation go where like a new manager comes in and within 2 days they say, yeah, sorry? Is it text? Is it?
No, most of it's through body language. So most of it's through body language. You can see quite clearly when someone likes you and when they don't. I think that they make that fairly obvious. But the conversation came around about a month in, where I went and knocked on the door and said, look, I'm feeling it's pretty obvious that I'm not in your plans. Can you tell me a little bit from your side? And he just said, yeah, I'll be honest, I told the club that I want to sign a new player. That player was Kim Min-jae from Beijing. At the time I thought, what? Like, no, how? He's a phenomenal player. He's just won the league with Napoli. He did really well for Fenerbahce 1 year, moved on to Napoli, and now I think United are about to buy him. So exceptional player. And sometimes, from my perspective, just need a little bit of luck. And in that case, was a little bit of bad luck, but it happens.
Before you made it professional, what would be your highlights, say, through your academy system? What would be the highlight that you'd take from being in that Spurs academy?
My first thing I'd say, my first memory of it was just getting the kit. You know, just like having like the Tottenham kit. It was just like such a special feeling. You know, having the tracksuit, having the shorts, having your bag to go home with. Like that was like my first feeling. And then it probably sounds a bit like cheesy, but the second part would be like would literally be the bond that we had, because I don't think I've ever had that bond since. That bond you have for a youth team where you're all desperate to make it was like so special. And as soon as I stepped into first team football, which I did from 17, it changes. You know, people are fighting for their mortgages. People have got their kids and wives at home. They haven't got that bond. You know, it's one session in the morning. You finish at 12 or 12:30. Everyone's home. You know, everyone's home. Whereas the academy, you're there all day. You're in it together. You're in digs. So. Yeah, that's probably something that I look back at. They're my two probably best sort of memories of being in the academy.
How did you feel about your future in professional football?
I wasn't sure that I was going to make it, to be honest with you. I really wasn't sure I was going to make it. It just kept happening so quickly. And then I guess I felt, even by the time I played for England, I still didn't feel like a footballer. I still thought that I needed to keep climbing and climbing. And that's probably something I regret, that I didn't actually stop to enjoy the fact that I was playing for Tottenham, the fact that I'd scored a Premier League goal, you know, like stuff like that all you guys are obviously dreaming of. I kind of had it and I just let it go. It kind of came and went so quickly. So, yeah, when I look back, I wish I just took more time to, like, you know, really enjoy the moment.
What's like your best advice for someone that's probably never like played in academy or anything like that and still wants to make it?
Good question to end on. Yeah, that's tough. So what would be my advice? Patient. So I'd say be patient. I would say don't let one coach, 2 coaches, 3 coaches, 20 coaches tell you that you're not good enough. Like, don't let it happen. Like, there'll be so many people with different opinions. Keep going, because for me, like, one coach can see something, and that one coach who sees it could give you your every opportunity, open every door for you. And then sometimes it's just about being patient enough to wait for that right coach, because as I mentioned, I got told I had 2 left feet. I had lots of clubs tell me no. Eze had another story of being released from all these different teams and now playing for England. There's so many stories out there. There's so much evidence out there to suggest that you can still make it even after all the rejections. But I would just strongly suggest that whilst working on the football, have something else on the side. Like, your education, like, for me, is so important, because even if you do make it pro, amazing. Like, you're a footballer and you've got a degree. Like, there's nothing better. Nothing can stop you at that stage. You know, so many players get rich and make mistakes. I've made mistakes, you know. So if you could do both at the same time, that would be my ultimate sort of success story, I guess, to sort of work on those 2 things.
Right, brilliant. I think that's a wrap. Thank you, Stephen. Really appreciate it. Real pleasure, man. Stay effective.